While other people were taking drugs and generally rebelling, Eric was pondering ancient buildings, and one in particular, the Great Pyramid of Egypt. Built as a tomb for the pharaoh Cheops, it's made of 2.5 million stone blocks. Some of the biggest weigh up to 80 tons and were transported from quarries hundreds and hundreds of miles away. And that was 1,000 years before the invention of the wheel. To Eric von Daniken, that posed a huge question. Not why the aliens didn't give us the wheel, but another big question.
This is the largest man-made monument on Earth, with a height of about 450 feet and weighing 30 million tons. It's quite a piece. I mean, for a group of people or architects who came right out from Stone Age time.
Von Daniken's theories make academic Egyptologists ever so slightly irritated.
Von Daniken doesn't seem to like human beings very much. He does them down, claims that people are just out of the Stone Age. Well, the Stone Age actually ended some centuries before the pyramids were built, for starters. As far as I'm concerned, Eric von Daniken is a one-man self-publicity machine. I wouldn't characterise what he does in anything like scientific work.
But no matter what the experts say, Eric has stuck to his guns.
I was never afraid to be ridiculed. I was never afraid that others have a complete different opinion to me. It's wonderful. It's their freedom. But I at least read most of the archaeological books, while the other side, they have no idea what Eric von Daniken says.
He states that you couldn't cut granite except with laser beams. Well, it's been shown that using a copper saw, using just ordinary desert sand as an abrasive, within a week or so you can slice through a great chunk of granite.
As far as the professionals are concerned, Egyptians didn't need big lasers and big UFOs to move stones. They relied on their big Egyptian muscles.
The transport of blocks of stone isn't an issue. Egyptologists have actually done experiments with large numbers of people in a large block of stone, and you just pull it.
Some of the blocks came from Aswan. Take the ceiling of the King's Chamber. This is from Aswan, but this is 1,000 kilometers away from here. It's not so easy.
There's actually a carving in an Egyptian tomb showing them moving a huge statue exactly by that, simply by muscle power. So there's no mystery about how the Egyptians moved great blocks of stone.
And here it is. There are no aliens in this ancient Egyptian carving of the pyramids being built, unless they're cunningly disguised as ancient Egyptians, which is probably why it doesn't appear in any of von Daniken's books.
I fail to understand why people can't really grasp the fact that these things were built by the men and women who lived at that time in that country. The logic just seems irrefutable.
There are some other obvious quirks in Eric's theory about the pyramids. For one thing, he says after the aliens left, humans did build some pyramids, using alien technology left behind. How did they do that?
That's another mystery.
He's not quite sure. He also says the pharaoh's tombs were actually a cunning attempt to copy the alien science of cryogenics, which preserves the dead in a state of suspended animation. Von Daniken was quickly dismissed as a crank, and still is. But the archaeologists don't have it all their own way, for there's one irritating little puzzle they haven't been able to solve yet. According to the scientists, the Great Pyramid was completed in just 20 years. Given there are over 2 million blocks, that means the Egyptians had to quarry, move and set a block every minute and a half of every day, 365 days a year for the whole construction period.
One has to admit that the details of pyramid construction remain obscure.
2.5 million blocks in such a short time? There really must be doubts if you have a reasonable brain.
Having wowed the public with his theory about pyramids, von Daniken then set out across the world to find more evidence of more alien ancient activity.
These extraterrestrials have left some proof, but the question is complicated. Left what? What could they have left?
And what do you know? He saw that proof everywhere. This 5,000-year-old African cave painting, for example, he says, is of a spaceman, complete with helmet. This ancient stone, he claims, shows people using telescopes. And when he climbed into this Mayan tomb in Mexico, he found what his book would later say was a carving of what seemed like an extraterrestrial traveller in his spaceship. Hunched over the controls, the alien seems to have his breathing apparatus in place, and flames are spewing out of his rocket. According to von Daniken, it's just like the liftoff at Cape Canaveral. And then he said he had the revelation which proved his idea had to be true when he visited South America and flew over the famous Nazca lines in Peru. These ancient patterns, drawn into the desert, stretch for miles. Some are weird shapes. But mysteriously, those weird shapes can only really be seen from the sky.
I had my first flight over Nazca, and it was very, very impressive because you can see it only from the air. Then you fly higher, then you see something who looks like airstrips. You think, this is fascinating, this is incredible, this is not normal for the natives. And then the question comes, why have they done it, and why exactly here?
Archaeologists say these lines are irrigation channels or religious symbols. But von Daniken says he has a much more convincing explanation involving, yes, you guessed it, aliens.
We had a mother spaceship around the Earth. From the mother spaceship, smaller vehicle came down, and they were looking for some kind of mineral and whatever. And they make their discoveries and disappeared again.
The first lines, he said, were left by accident by the aliens who left marks when they landed and took off in their UFOs.
The natives came and see the line of landing because sand and little stones are blown away. And now the natives start to make lines like they have seen created by some mysterious god.
Eric believes that the Nazca were so impressed by the visiting aliens, they thought they were gods and set out to copy the lines themselves. He says it was an effect similar to that modern Westerners had on Stone Age tribes in the 20th century. New Guinea tribespeople thought the first Westerners they saw were gods who had come down from the heavens in silver birds. They worshipped them long after they'd gone and even built model planes and airfields hoping to lure the silver birds back. But it didn't work for the poor old Peruvians though. The aliens never returned. And instead, they got the Spanish. Eric is now convinced that all over the world, ancient man had mistaken aliens for gods. This realisation has had a dramatic effect on him. He was a devout Catholic, but isn't anymore.
How did it change my life? First of all, it changed my religion. Now I'm praying to some thing which I cannot understand, which I know it exists. As soon as you start to understand it in a cosmical way, it changes your point of view concerning religion and concerning having right. I cannot live anymore with cults and psychology.
Eric von Daniken has a brand new explanation for the whole of human development. Creatures from outer space, he says, not only built and designed most ancient monuments, they inspired all the great religions too. This is heady stuff, but there are two small problems. Not a single expert agrees, and none of his evidence stacks up. Take the so-called alien astronaut in his rocket ship from the Mayan tomb. What von Daniken says are controls and flames are in fact